Writing an excellent thematic essay for the global history regions is easy provided you know how to structure it. So let's take a look at this particular question and then work through it together. So when we're looking at it, I can see that the theme is political systems, and it says that political systems have affected the history and culture of nations and societies. So we're not going to be talking about the introductory paragraph, which we know we're going to use this for, or the concluding paragraph. What we're going to be doing today is looking exclusively at the task. So let's take a look at this task and analyze it. And this task says what? It says choose two, and that's crucial, two different political systems, and for each, what are we doing? We're going to be describing the characteristics of the political system and discussing how the political system has affected the history or culture of a nation or society. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the characteristics, and we're going to be talking about how the system has affected the history or the nation or society. So let's think about which of the two political systems we're going to be identifying. We've got a number of options underneath, among them communism, fascism, theocracy. What I'm going to choose right now is absolute monarchy and communism. If you want to choose additionally fascism, because we've discussed that in class quite a bit too, you are more than welcome. All right, so once we understand what the task is and what we're doing, we need to think about how to structure it, and this could be the first crucial step to addressing this. So what we're going to do is on a scrap piece of paper, when you're taking the Regents or today, we need to think about how we're going to structure this. So I know that we're doing two different political systems. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to label this, what? Political system. So I'm labeling it, and actually let's, political, sorry, let's give us a little bit of space. Political systems. All right, so this is the big idea. This is what we're doing. And now we need to create a little T-chart because we know we need to select two different political systems. Let's do communism. And let's do absolute monarchy. All right, absolute monarchy. All right, so on your paper, you should have your T-chart split up like this. And now what's next? Well, when we go back to our document, right, it says we need to do two things. We need to describe the characteristics of the political system. So let's think about the characteristics. We're going to be talking about the characteristics of communism. So I'm going to write characteristics on the communism side and characteristics on the absolute monarchy side. And what else do we have to do? We have to talk about one more thing. We have to talk about we've got to talk about how it's affected a history or culture of a nation or society. So let's shrink this down and let's think about how we're structuring this. So again, we're talking about political systems, communism versus absolute monarchy, characteristics, and then how it's affected the nation or history. How did it affect the nation or history? Affect nation or history. All right. So now once we've got this T-chart set up, we just created our own graphic organizer because when you guys take the Regents, Mr. Schulman and I are not going to have an opportunity to give you guys like a printed up graphic organizer. So now what you're going to need to do is go in and sort of fill in the blanks. So when we're talking about absolute monarchy, what are some of the characteristics? We know that some of the characteristics are what? It's one individual, one person in charge. One person in charge. You can talk about divine right, which we know divine right comes from this idea that the power was bestowed by God or something like that. We know that this person is like a king, often is above law. So I'm not even writing complete sentences, and our expectation is that you don't write complete sentences either. We're just doing sentence fragments or ideas. When we write the essay, that's where we can fill in. What are some other characteristics? Maybe you want to talk about how this was common in France or other countries. Let's talk about characteristics of communism. We know that this idea of communism was developed by Karl Marx. We know that government owns property. We also know that there's this redistribution of wealth, or everyone is financially equal, right? There's this equality with everybody in society. So we've also got to talk about how this affects nations. What are some ways communism has affected nations? Well, we can think about what? We can think about China. We can think about Cuba. We can also think about the USSR. We can talk about Lenin. We can talk about Stalin. What else can we talk about? We can talk about Stalin's five-year plan. We can talk about industrialization. We can talk about how it led to the space race, but also the Cold War. So these are just, Cold War with the West. So I'm just jotting down ideas that I will flesh out in the paragraph. What about absolute monarchy? You can talk about how it led to the French Revolution. Because what? Because the king was treating its people unfairly, because he was above the law and he could exploit everybody. So here are characteristics of communism and absolute monarchy, and when we think about it, we've discussed how they affect history, nations, or societies. Let's take a look at this next thematic essay question. So I see that the theme is change. And again, we're not going to be talking about the introductory or concluding paragraphs. We're going to be talking about simply the body paragraphs. And this essay is not about political revolutions. So what we're going to be doing is identifying, and this is critical, 2 non-political revolutions. And meaning, again, we're going to be doing a little T-chart that brought about important intellectual, economic, and or social changes to societies. And for each, what are we going to be doing? You're going to be describing one change brought about. All right, so talking about one is change. And the other is discussing an impact this non-political revolution had on a specific society or societies. So impact on society. All right. So again, let's draw up our little T-chart graphic organizer. Actually, before we do that, we need to identify which ones that we want to write about. So we could do Neolithic, I see scientific, agricultural, but also maybe my favorite, the Industrial Revolution. So that one's a lot of fun. Enlightenment is fun, but I'm going to do, we can do also agricultural. Again, you guys have the luxury of selecting whichever revolutions you'd like. So now that we've got agricultural and industrial, let's set this up. All right. So what's the big picture? The big picture we're doing is, all right, let's shift this over. We're doing non-political revolutions. And you guys are probably commenting on this already. I apologize for my handwriting. It's not super easy. I'm just trying to quickly convey these ideas. And we're going to be doing the Industrial Revolution on the left side. And on the right side, we're going to do agricultural. Just as an example, you can select whichever ones you want. And then, so now we've split it, right? So we've got non-political revolutions on the left side, industrial, on the right side, agricultural. And so when we're looking at this, we've got to do what? For each one, we're going to be describing the change and the impact on society for each one. Sometimes I get confused. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing. So let's set this up so we don't have that confusion. So we're going to be talking about change. How did Industrial Revolution change society? And change the world. And what was the other one? How did it affect society? So once we set it up like this, we haven't even really done any critical thinking yet. We haven't drawn on any of all the information we've been learning over the last 2 years. We're simply structuring it appropriately. All right, so what change was brought about and an impact on society? All right, so change. If we're talking